Greetings, Star Wars Unlimited players. Today we're going to be talking about the Luke Skywalker deck, and we're going to talk about 4 different tips and tricks you can use to maximize this deck. Some of these were actually staring me straight in the face, so maybe you haven't noticed them. Let's dive right in, and I'll go over each and every one on how to maximize your play with this deck. So welcome to the Unlimited Power channel. My name is John, and every week we're doing various videos on how to get the most out of your cards and your decks in Star Wars Unlimited. So if that's something you're interested in, then please consider subscribing. Let's get into talking about Luke Skywalker. He is a 4/7 who basically every time he attacks, he will grant a shield to an allied unit. His ability when he is not epic is tap him and pay 1 resource to give a shield to a heroic aspect. So in his deck, there are many units that have the heroic aspect, and I guess if you are building a list around him in the future, then really consider pretty much every unit you're going to want to put in this deck should have heroic aspect, because for 1 mana, giving them a shield is very, very powerful. You can shield a unit when it comes into play on that turn, and that's where some of the synergies are going to come into it. So let's start with tip 1. Okay, so our first tip, and it is a very simple one. Most of you probably already figured this one out. It is the R2-D2/C3PO synergy. Both of these are 1/4 creatures, and R2 is kind of crazy for being only 1 resource to cast. When played, you look at the top card of your deck. Very simple. You either put it back on the top, or you otherwise leave it on the bottom. Now, that happens on played or on attack. So R2 will let you look at the top of your deck all the time. Plus, he's going to stick around for a few turns, right? Because he has got 4 life. You can also be shielding him with Luke. Very handy. C3PO, also 1 damage, 4 life. When played or on attack, choose a number and look at the top card of your deck. If the cost is the chosen number, you may reveal it and draw it. So basically, the synergy here is super simple. If you have an R2 and a 3PO, you kind of don't want to play them if you don't have the other one. So if you have 1 R2 in your hand, play other units till you draw a 3PO and vice versa. And then once you've got both of them, and you can play both of them, and you can shield either one or both of them, what you want to be doing is attacking with R2, looking at a top card. They will then know basically how many resource that top card will take. So whenever you attack with 3PO, you'll have the knowledge to basically say, I know the top card of my deck is a 3 resource, so you can call that out and you can draw it. You do have to reveal it when you draw it. So I guess you can not reveal it, or not call the right number when you attack with 3PO if you really don't want your opponent to know. But most of the time, it's probably fine for your opponent to know what card you're drawing to a certain extent. They're probably expecting some of your bigger cards anyway. They probably know what your deck is. So 3PO and R2-D2 have a crazy synergy that's super simple, but it's maybe not super obvious to everybody, especially if you've only played a handful of games with this deck. You maybe actually never got to a situation where you had both of these cards in your hand. So that is tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is also pretty simple, but I didn't realize it straight away. It is Chewbacca. Chewbacca is a 3/6, so very survivable. He's heroic as well, can benefit from Luke's shield. And when this unit is attacked, you get to ready him. So, my thought is that every single time your opponent wants to kill Chewbacca, they're going to need to hit him with multiple units to do 6 damage. Chewbacca, each time he gets hit, will do his 3 damage back. So the strategy around Chewbacca here is just always attack your opponent's base, because you don't want to be bleeding hit points off Chewbacca by attacking and killing other units. Your opponent will do that for you anyway, because he's Sentinel, so they're going to have to attack him. They're going to have to kill him. So just use his 3 damage against your opponent's base. Shield him if you can, because I suppose every single turn he's in play and he gets hit multiple times, will give you multiple times to do damage to the opponent's base. So you could, if you shielded him and your opponent needed to kill him with 1 or 2 weak units, you could potentially get 9 damage out a turn from just hitting their base. So I think Chewbacca is a very powerful card. Just don't waste his damage on enemy units. Always hit the base, I suppose, unless they have a Sentinel down, because your opponent will take his damage anyway, so you may as well just use his damage to hit the base. If you can get an experience token or 2 on Chewbacca as well, that is very, very powerful. Now, tip number 3 is an interesting one, and it is Leia, and Leia is actually super strong. She is only a 2 mana cost, so 2/2 is not great, but her ability when played is crazy good. You either ready a resource or an exhaust a unit. I think that you should sit on this card and exhaust key enemy units. Readying a resource is nice. Exhausting, I don't know, Darth Vader, a 5/8 when he flips over, is super great. So I've had Leia in my hand as a new player and just played her early in the game and thought, yeah, cool, I can get one more resource back. That is useful, and it is useful. But the second part of exhausting key enemy units is way more powerful. I suppose it's definitely just something to consider, because as a new player or an inexperienced player, you get you've got 2 mana, you've got Leia in your hand, why would you not play her? She's a 2/2, she'll do some damage. But if there's another card you could play and sit on Leia to a more key moment, I would advise you do that. I think that is way more powerful. And my final tip for today is shoot first. Shoot first lets you get +1/+0 and then do your damage before the defender. Now, if we've said that Luke's deck gets a lot of power from having every unit shielded, remember you can only shield a unit with Luke in the turn that they arrive or the turn that they are played. So, shoot first would let you do your damage with a large unit that has a shield on it from a previous turn and keep the shield. And keeping the shield and clearing the board can be very, very powerful. Imagine the opponents put out a sentinel unit that you would have to break your shield against. You don't want to break your shield because it makes your larger unit more obnoxious to deal with. So using shoot first in the later game to target a unit to defeat key enemy units and keep units shielded is very, very strong. And that is the fourth and final tip for the starter deck. So we will of course be looking at the Luke deck in the future and figuring out what cards you can get fairly easily to improve upon this starter deck. We've got so much more content coming out on the channel. If you like this video, please consider booping the like button, and I will catch you in the next one.